I really appreciate you. We have Ms. Roya Hanna, who is also running for state's attorney. And I want to get to you, like I said, you guys are brave, you're Baltimore City. I would never run for anything in Baltimore City, but you all are brave. And you keep doing it over and over, so you know. But
brave or crazy?
Yeah. But Roya, I want to start with you. I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are. For those who may not know who you are, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
I am currently a criminal defense attorney, but I was prosecutor in the city for 12 years. For 9 of those, I tried murders and shootings. I have the distinction of never having lost a homicide in all of my time there. I also traveled around the country for 3 years and trained people on how to establish effective community prosecution and gun violence prevention programs. As I mentioned, currently I'm a defense attorney and I do a lot of work with our juvenile offenders or juveniles charged as adults, but I handle all types of other cases as well. As far as my personal background, I was born in Haiti. I grew up in Samoa, Tanzania, Czechoslovakia, Morocco, Canada, and Israel. But I've been in Baltimore since 1997. I have 2 little dogs and my world is great.
All right. And Saru.
Big dog.
I don't know who doesn't know you, but anyway, tell us about you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Lady J, for the honor of inviting me to this. I was there at the beginning, and I saw what you had as a twinkle in your eye. There was so much promise, there was so much heart. And what you wanted to do was, frankly, give people like me who love the city a chance to share their thoughts and their perspectives. You've been doing that from the very beginning, and the city and the broader community is grateful for all that you do. My name, again, is Tharu Vignarajah. I'm running for state's attorney. I do want to spend a minute sharing my personal story because I think it's important for people to know where you come from, where your roots are. I was born on the other side of the earth in a place called Sri Lanka, but the fate of my family was tied to the future of this city from before I was born. It was actually 1970 when my mom taught math at Poly High School. She was by herself in her early 30s. She was a rebel. She wanted to be a teacher of math at a time when women and teachers of math were rarely in the same sentence. She came back to Sri Lanka. She got married to my father, had me and my sister, and then a war broke out, and we fled. We returned and crossed an ocean in search of a better life, and Baltimore gave us a chance. My mom would start at Poly, finished her career many years later at Morgan State. My father was also a high school teacher. He taught at Edmondson, and then Douglas, at Southern, and then Western. They're both retired now. My mom retired at a reasonable age. My father, when he retired, was the oldest teacher teaching in Maryland. He was 80 years old. He's 85 now. He does not look 85. He does not act 85. He doesn't like me telling people he's 85. But that's the tradition in which I was raised. It was a tradition of hard work, of public service, of faith, of believing that you can put your time into doing good deeds and that will be paid forward. And in so many ways, my sister and I are the beneficiaries of them living the American dream. I went to public schools, Edmondson Heights Elementary, to Woodlawn High School, and then I went off to Yale College and Harvard Law School. I was president of the Harvard Law Review before Barack Obama made it cool, and then I returned here to devote myself to service. I was a Supreme Court clerk for Justice Stephen Breyer. I was a federal prosecutor, a city prosecutor, and Deputy Attorney General of Maryland. The city is in crisis. We know that. 2,500 dead over the last 8 years, 500 fewer police officers today than we had at the beginning of Ms. Mosby's time in office. And people have lost hope. It's the part that breaks my heart the most. I talk to people all the time, and they don't see how we get out of this. And one of the things that I share with Roya is our optimism and our commitment and our conviction that this can get better. It's not rocket science, but it does require experience. It requires a person who's been there doing the work at every level. I'm very, very proud of the career I've had, but I'm even more proud of the opportunity to serve once again. Thank you so much for the invitation. I look forward to your questions.
So before I say anything, does anybody have any questions for Tharu or Roya?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Hi, Pastor Wright.
Hi. So I have a question for both of you. You obviously clearly both have diverse backgrounds. through coming here, your parents, their education, their background in education and teaching. And Roya, you mentioned that you had been all over the place, but I believe your parents' background was in human services, kind of, like doing the different goodwill work around the world in different places. So I want to ask you, Ms. Hannah, Baltimore is a mostly black city. There's a lot of issues with regard to that, with folks talking about redlining, what the mayor did, what this one did, what that one did. And a lot of black folk have a very sour taste in their mouth still with regards to racism. So I'm going to ask you this question in a very specific way. Now, I would like you to take a few minutes and explain to the audience how you, as an African American woman, feel about the perception that you are not able to understand the culture here.
So this is a complicated question.
That's a deep question.
It really is, and just, you know,
We
she
didn't
did
waste
not
any time, not like with your
realize
favorite
that.
color.
Right. So my father is Egyptian. My mother is from California. She is white. She was adopted. So we don't quite know her ethnicity and stuff, but my father was born in Africa and Egypt. He came to the United States. He was fleeing persecution as well. And he came here and then they moved to Haiti, and they moved to Haiti to establish a school for girls. And that is what he did, and that school still runs today. Eventually, they joined the State Department, and my mother did human resources and all different things, but mainly our objective in being overseas and living in Africa and living in Samoa was to learn more about humanity and to contribute what we could to the culture there, to really serve in our own capacity in those countries. And, I was very young when we were doing all of this. Well, it was my whole life, so I grew up doing it. But what I learned is that everybody all over the world, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter who your parents are, everyone wants the same thing. They want to grow up in a safe, loving environment. They want to take care of their families. They want to feel respected and have dignity. That is everyone. And, I think given my background and the diversity that I have, I understand why people look at me with the straight hair and are like, oh, she's the white girl. I get it. But I think there's a lot more to all of us than just what people see. And, I really do encourage people to find out about the background of all of your candidates, because I think it's probably a little bit more than the outward appearance.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry, I know somebody had something to say, but I have to say this. Because I was so irritated a few years back that Theru was running for mayor. And I used to interview him a lot. And I got a lot of flack from people in the community because I was interviewing him and felt like I was giving him too much airtime because he's not black. I think we have to get away from that ignorance of looking at where you're from. The bottom line is that Baltimore is bleeding. We have young men who are not making it to 22, 23, 24, 25. We sit around and we argue about
American young men
Yes.
who are being slaughtered on our streets. And if we can't talk about it and actually get solutions for it, we're going to continue to allow an entire community to be killed.
Right. We got to stop focusing on his color, her color. That needs to stop because we're not saving lives at this point. We have corruption going on out of the yin yang, corruption everywhere. I said maybe it's a job requirement. I don't know that you have to be corrupt in order to get a position. I don't know because it just seems like it continues on and we're so busy focusing on the little trivial stuff. And so I'm glad that you two are running because I like you two very much. And I like that what you stand for, because I know what both of you stand for. But I do want to put that question out there because I know you've heard it, where people straight up told me that they were not going to vote for you when you were running for mayor because you're Indian and you're not from the community. And tell the story about your mom and dad and, you know, working in schools and all of that. So how do you deal with that?
Look, I don't think it's just about race. This city is divided in so many ways. It is a checkerboard of white and black squares, one neighborhood to the next. It is the product and the legacy of redlining that this city literally started. In the early 1900s, we were the first city in America that decided that we would create a checkerboard of race across our city. And the remnants of that, the consequences of that, we see still today. And so, with all due respect to the people that are critical of the people that you're talking about, look, they have a fair point. Race is a part of this city. It is not the only part, but it is a part of the city. And I can understand a level of skepticism about someone who's got a long, funny name, who doesn't look the part or hasn't acted the part. Look, I remember someone said to me, Dewey, you seem equally comfortable in an all-black Baptist church as you do in an all-white corporate boardroom. And I said, no, you misunderstand. I'm equally uncomfortable in both of those situations. I'm always the one South Asian kid, right? At Woodlawn High School, an overwhelmingly black school, I was the one kid who had to navigate that gauntlet. And then you go up to Yale and Harvard Law School, and they're very different, and I got to navigate that too. The reality is that over the course of my life, I have had the challenge, and I now say the privilege, of being forced to build bridges with people no matter their backgrounds. And here's the good news. If you build those bridges on the basis of something besides race, right? There are no Sri Lankan Hindus running around Baltimore. I'm the only one. But you build bridges with all these other folks, and those bridges are more durable. They are more strong. They will survive the test of time. And what I'm so proud of is that over the last couple of years, as I have tried to introduce myself to Baltimore, I think people have a sense of me. They have a sense of what I care about. They know that I speak truth to power. They know I'm not afraid to stand up to these politicians, no matter how unpopular it might make me in their eyes. They know that I do the work, whether it's during the campaign, after the campaign. And because of that, those bridges are now stronger than ever before. You know, there's early polling in this race. And one of the things that I'm so proud of is one of my opponents has a lot of support in one part of Baltimore, but zero support among white Baltimoreans. There's another candidate that has some support among white Baltimoreans, but no support in black Baltimore. I'm very proud that we have support in both, because isn't it time for us to transcend these differences? It is black and white people that are dying on the streets of Baltimore. It is black and white people that are afraid to go out of their homes. And it's black and white people that want black and white communities to be safe. The gravestones of the people slain on the streets of Baltimore, they do not bear the markings of party, Democrat or Republican. They do not say whether the person was black or white. All they have is their birth date and the day that they were slain in the streets of Baltimore. And we need to look beyond it if we're going to start solving these problems. I really believe that.
Yeah. Any questions for Roya and?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
I have a question. First of all, I want to thank you for coming, very courageous. I am concerned about crime in Baltimore. I'm concerned about fratricide. I am more concerned about police criminality. Can both of you address that issue?
Sure. You know, I think I'm the only candidate who's actually prosecuted a police officer or a retired police officer for shooting an unarmed person. I'm the only person who was prosecuting a police officer for a double homicide. I take police accountability incredibly seriously. And, you know, I've done the work, and I know that establishing police accountability is essential to rebuilding community trust. And unless we rebuild that community trust, we won't be able to solve the homicides, the shootings. We won't get people coming forward if they don't think that the system is fair and just.
Absolutely.
And we have to make sure that we hold police accountable and treat them fairly as well. You know, just because your job shouldn't determine what's going to happen to you in court. They should be held to the same standards as absolutely everyone else. And I do make that pledge that I will certainly do that as state's attorney. And I've done it before, and we'll make sure that we work to rebuild the community trust, and that we all work together to solve the problem of homicides and robberies and carjackings and everything else that's going wrong with the city.
Thank you so much.
You know, there's today 2 shows on HBO about Baltimore. One of them was The Wire, and the other one is this new miniseries, We Own the City. One of them tells and chronicles the story in very powerful ways of the fratricide, of the fact that black men are killing black men in Baltimore every day. And it's been that way for decades. That series was years and years ago, and what they told the world, what they literally told the world, you can go to Europe, you can go to Africa, and when you say you're from Baltimore, they say, oh, that's the show The Wire.
Yes.
Now the world will learn about the other story, which is a story about perhaps the worst policing scandal in American history. Police officers who by day wore a uniform, but also were robbers.
Right.
They were planting evidence. They were stealing drugs from drug dealers and selling it to other drug dealers. They were willing to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, for one reason: greed. They wanted the money. They weren't doing it because they didn't have jobs. They were doing it because they could. And we let them get away with it under our nose for years. This wasn't a modest scandal that happened over the course of one case or 1 week or 1 month. These were a squad of officers that over the course of years perpetrated the worst policing scandal in American history.
Absolutely.
And now the world knows what we all knew, that this happens in Baltimore. Now be clear, that is not the full story of the police department, right? There are hundreds of officers that are doing noble work, that kiss their children goodbye in the morning and go into the most dangerous city in America at a time when it's not particularly fashionable to be a police officer, and they put their lives at risk to protect us. And they too should be honored. They too are outraged by the men that dishonor the badge, that stain the profession. So what are we going to do about it? Because these speeches don't hold police accountable. You got to do the work. You got to prosecute cases like Roy Hanna did. You've got to make sure that you're putting in place a partnership that is not I scratch your back, you scratch mine, but a true partnership, which is you hold me accountable and I hold you accountable too. I'll give one concrete example of something that I would do as state's attorney. Those GTTF officers, the Gun Trace Task Force, long before they were forging search warrants and planting evidence, they had learned to commit overtime fraud. They were collecting $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 of overtime, each one of them each year. We had the warning signs. We signed their checks. We paid them this money, and we didn't think to audit. We didn't think to ask twice where they were when they were spending all of that time collecting overtime. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to say to the police department, I would love for you to work hard and work overtime. But if you're making over $10,000 or $20,000 in overtime, we're going to look a little bit more closely. And if you're doing it because you're working on a wiretap, if you're doing it because you're working on a trial, good, terrific. But if you're doing it because you're out in Ocean City pretending to work, if you're doing it because you signed up for vacation so that you could work another thing and then you're claiming overtime, shame on you. Because this city doesn't have extra dollars to pad your salaries when you're not doing the work. That's one concrete thing that we can do to practice.
Eugene, go ahead.
Yes. I'm going to try to make this as short as possible and use more language. I'm a fatherist and I make it clear. I ain't no fatherist. I'm a fatherist, but every time I put my voice up, everybody always like, you too loud. That's my natural. But anyway, let me make this clear. I'm a father's right advocate. Why? For the simple reason. 4 kids by the same mother. I've always registered as independent, never knew anything. I did everything that they said a black man shouldn't do. 4 kids by the same mother. Their middle name is my middle name, which stands for twin, same name. All of my kids was in line. I never knew, and this is a story that Baltimore City knows so often, but we ignore it just like my fight. And this is why I take a strong stand. There's a reason why I'm going through all this, so please bear with me, okay? Because we're going to get down to the basic of crime, as I've seen it. I did everything they said a black man. Mother, everything from Africa, I eat my fufu and soup, I'm a cultural man. Did everything they said we shouldn't be doing. general contractor, boycott contractor, everything. When the woman decided to leave, I paid the price. The reason why I say that because I thought my story was unique, but it's not. But the problem is a lot of people's voice are not being heard like mine. Not everybody is using boycott to confuse and give up and just go crazy. They give up. So let's go back to crime. 2020, I put my name in that hat. Not because I can articulate all my stuff. Most of the people that see me, all they see is he's a street kid. But when you go into my academics and everything, BCCCs, I am the first president of the Construction Supervision School. I went to before I even put my name on that list, every school to bring the young black men, white men, just the people of the community, whoever you may be, to understand construction. Why? Because I saw too many abandoned buildings. I saw too many history deteriorating and dying off. I'm a cause for y'all. Through those buildings that you see that are vacant, are history being dying off when you are actually in the community. So when I put my name on that, it was because I got sick and tired coming up forms like this, where everybody thought because they went through the college like I went through, and they wear suits and ties, which I have many of them. But I make my living getting dirty. I have many of them. But they thought that they are smarter than our pain. So when I said I went there, I went to the roots of the problem that I saw. Me and my son was homeless, and I fought for my kids because there was no service to provide any services for me. They said as everything was in my name. She had free lawyer services for accusation. The only time Eugene Boycott, as crazy as everybody may think I am, ever spent time was in jail. You know what that was for? Child support. And I sat in jail and I took notes. All right? When I came out, my life is still, it's been 7, 8 years of fighting, and I haven't given up. I speak to a lot of these men out there. Every day on these corners that y'all look at is just number. Those are actually human beings. Amen. I have watched young men play with my son and right on the corner. So my question is this, I'm gonna cut it short because I can go, because the pain is real. This is not a politician talk. Everything Eugene Boycott is doing now, I'm in the private sector with non-profit and not even reaching out for the church is because my pain is real. And you help others when God helps you. What would y'all do? Because when you talk to people, they are screaming like they have nowhere to run to. I'm a proud Republican, conservative, no doubt. I'm holding down for that. Because I believe in the value and the principle of those, but it's to each their own. In the community that know me and they speak to you and they say, we don't even trust the cops because there's a disconnect. What would y'all do to get the community have more confidence within the police? What program would y'all put together? Because I come here and I'm just making my voice heard. But I've been through many and thousands of this where everybody's selling us a lot of things, but I'm saying yet to see anybody take it upon what I've done in one race on my own against all odds. So now let's get back to the community where people come to me. What would you do? Hold up to the room. What would y'all do to put it to start getting the confidence in the community that they can talk where cops and the community are talking, that people can actually report crimes and feel like it were actually that dude that felt comfortable, because I've seen people walk up, I saw a black man, not white supremacy, walk up to another black man and pull a gun, boom, and just walk away just like this. This is reality. This is not white supremacists. What would y'all do? But the people can't report it. What would y'all do to get those people confidence to say, that's Chris, I knew his little kid, he just did that, he just killed another black man, that's a future gone, I want him off the street. What are y'all gonna do to get that together? And I'm gonna hold y'all to it. Pardon me for making it so long.
So I think the first thing you have to start doing is winning. And I say that because, you know, I had a lot of cases when I was prosecuting shootings where the victims would recant. And they'd come in and they'd say, yeah, I might have said that, but that's not who did it, because they were trying to preserve their lives, right? They knew the consequences, and they would have said anything to get off that stand. But, you know, I remember this one man, and he had been shot. He was a witness, and he had been shot later because he was a witness. And we go to trial on the shooting where he's a witness, and he recanted because, you know, he learned his lesson, right? He heard what he was supposed to do, and he learned that. And we eventually won the case. And I called him later, and he was overjoyed. For a good 15 minutes, he just kept thanking me and was just the happiest man ever. Now, he came into court and he said the man didn't do it, but we all know that wasn't true. He just had to say what he had to say. But, you know, people want you to win. If they know that you can actually get the job done, they will come to court. They will report their crime. But they're not going to step out on a ledge and risk their lives if they think you're going to give the case away. If they think that you're just going to go into court and lose it and the defendant's going to be back out on the street in a second. They know that this is a dangerous city and that they're taking a risk by doing that. So if you convince them that you can actually get the job done and that you have trained your prosecutors well and they know what they're doing and they will try that case and they will try the hell out of it, sorry for the language, Pastor, but that they will get everything done, people will cooperate. But I think you also got to provide them services, and you got to provide them with victim witness support and help move them if they're in an unsafe environment. And if they don't want to move, you know, you have to do other things like make sure that the cops drive by, give them a ring camera, do anything you can to make them feel a little bit safer so that they come forward. But generally, overall answer to your question, I think it is just you start doing the work. You start winning. You start rebuilding the community's trust. You know, we talked about community prosecution the other day. That is a great tool to help rebuild community's trust. I've seen it. You know, like I said, I traveled around the country for 3 years teaching prosecutors on how to do this. And that was always the main focus, was the community, the police, and the prosecutor working together to solve the problems. And when the community feels like they're actually being heard and that the prosecutor actually cares about the problems that they have, even if they're not major problems, then they feel like they can come forward. You know, right now the state's attorney's office is not prosecuting low-level crime. I know, everyone has thoughts about that. But it is a big issue because that is what the community cares about. That is what they see every single day. And so when they feel like the prosecutor doesn't care about the low-level crimes that they see every day that are terrorizing their community, why would they think that the prosecutor would care about the higher-level things? She's shown no interest in their day-to-day life, right? All of us can do it together, and I know that the city can be better than we are.
Okay, now I'm so sorry, we got other people coming up, but I want to give the room 2 minutes. Ricky, I just need 2 minutes, you're next.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
Hey, Jay, do you mind, because I think Eugene said so many important things, I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes talking about a couple of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
First, child support. Because we make it very difficult for men returning from prison to try to rebuild lives. And people should understand what it is that we do to make it so difficult. If you have unpaid child support, there's about $45 million of unpaid child support in Baltimore City right now. If you come back from prison to Baltimore City with unpaid child support, we do 2 things to you. Number 1, we say, and this is not money owed to the mother. The mother's already gotten her money. This is money that's owed to the state, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. And here's what we do. We, number 1, suspend your driver's license. Thousands of driver's licenses are suspended every year when people return from prison. And number 2, we tell men like Eugene, if you have unpaid child support to the government, not to the mother, to the government, we're going to garnish 2/3 of your wages. So if you try to get a job at McDonald's for $12 an hour, if you try to get a job in construction for $15 an hour, you're not getting paid $12 an hour, you're getting paid $4 an hour. You're not getting paid $15 an hour, you're getting paid $5 an hour, and that, by the way, is before taxes. It is rational. If somebody says to me, you just got back from prison, we took away your driver's license, you can either go to McDonald's and make $4 an hour, take the bus to work every day and get paid 3 weeks later and get taxes taken out, or you can go back to your old crew and start dealing again.
Right.
I cannot stand in judgment of the decision to go back to the crew when we put those kind of obstacles in your way. And by the way, this system is not working. We're not collecting the $45 million in. We collect 1% of that money, and yet year after year, despite the fact that we know that this is happening, nobody does anything to change it. That is something that we could change tomorrow to make it easier for men to be fathers. I think Roya said very eloquently what needs to be done to rebuild trust. This is not a new problem. I love it when Marilyn Mosby says we're the city that invented stop stitching. That's true. We did it before she was a lawyer. We did it a long time ago. And for years, when Roya was a prosecutor, when I was a prosecutor, it was not easy to get people to come forward. They weren't knocking on my door saying, Mr. Vigneraj, I want to be a witness in your murder case. They knew the risks that we were asking them to take, but we honored those risks by not giving the case away, by taking tough cases to trial, and by winning, by securing convictions in the face of uncertainty and adversity and against all odds, because that was our job. There was a case that actually Roya and I were both involved in, so I take some pride in being able to share this, not just on my behalf, but on hers as well. A guy named Luther Trent. He had gone in the middle of the night, put gasoline on his ex-girlfriend's house, and lit the house on fire with her and her 2 roommates inside, sleeping inside. They caught him. Thank God the victims were able to get away. They caught him within a couple of weeks and charged him with 3 counts of attempted murder and first-degree arson. They got him. The victims and the witnesses were cooperative. They were willing to testify. They shared the text messages where he said he was going to kill him. A few months later, the state's attorney's office offered a plea deal to time serve and let the guy go home over the objection of the victims.
Absolutely.
Do you think they ever want to testify again? Well, here's the good news. This is a rare good news.
Yes.
They contacted us. Roya brought some attention to the case. I offered to be their attorney pro bono, and we actually filed a motion saying the judge didn't get this one right. You're supposed to hear from the victims before you accept the plea, and the judge actually said, you know what, I got this one wrong.
Absolutely.
She heard from the victims. She undid the plea. Luther Trent is back in jail.
Absolutely.
And he is now being offered 22 years in prison. That's how you honor the risks of the people. That is how you do it. That's right. They interviewed him, and they said, what signal did you, what do you think about this sentence? He said, oh, I shouldn't be out on the streets. I should be in jail. Criminals know when they've done wrong. The criminals know that the system is broken. The criminals know you can commit murder in this city and get away with it, and they're right.
Absolutely.
That is what needs to change if you're going to rebuild trust in the community, if you're going to rebuild trust in the police department. You got to honor their risks. You got to honor their work. I'm so grateful, Lady J, for giving us an audience. This is an important race. I hope you pay attention to who showed up. I also hope you pay attention who didn't show up. Because